Everyone always asks, which one of you is older? The answer is, I'm 30 minutes older. Either you can say Edwina pushed me out, or she was just waiting to see if it was okay to come out. She is older.
By 30 minutes.
And it doesn't give me any clout. That is the way it goes. So. We were born in Memphis, Tennessee. Our father was an OB/GYN. Everybody in the hospital knew Dr. Bringle was having twins. When we were growing up, there weren't that many twins around, and Mother would go out and find clothes to dress us alike. And I think when we were about 12, we both went down to the kitchen one day and we looked at Mother and we said, we're not going to dress alike anymore. And she looked at us and said, fine, sure be easier on me. And so she didn't object to it. And that really talks about our parents in the sense of, you know, what we wanted to do, that they never said no. Well, the thing is, in being a twin, you know what the other twin is thinking. You don't even have to ask them. Mother used to say, y'all aren't even talking. And we'd say, well, we don't have to, because we know. That's a mother, grandfather, great-grandpapa. We're looking for a space to live, etc.
Oh, that's a good shot.
I love this one.
That's a really good one.
This is my grandmother's 91st birthday. Up here at Penland. She passed away at 104. This is when she was 91.
It was a very stern family. Papa, my grandfather, was very matter of fact. It was his way, and that's the way it was going to be. And my grandmother, Eva Jean, was very stern as well. But they were extremely supportive.
We didn't get by with much. We came home from school. All the clothes that had been washed for us and for our three brothers, you know, we were to put them up. And I can remember having the audacity one time to look at her and say, why don't the boys have to do this? Because we had three brothers. She just did the look.
Yeah, we were very close to Cynthia and Edwina growing up. We would go and spend that time in the summer with them, and we would cook with Edwina, and we would do pottery with Cynthia, and sometimes cook with her as well. It was fun.
They would come and visit Cynthia and I for 2 weeks, and we would keep one child each for a week, and in the middle of those 2 weeks, we would meet somewhere and trade children. Like we met in Hickory at a restaurant, and they're sitting there going, Edwina did this for me. Cynthia did this for me.
Sitting across the table.
Across the table from each other.
The first year in college, we both went to Southwestern at Memphis.
Well, in truth, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I had met someone who was a radiologic technologist. I went to training to be an X-ray tech.
That summer, after finishing that 1 year in college, a friend of mine who was also in college, and we'd been in art school together, Beverly Bowden, she said, well, I'm going to painting camp this summer. I said, great, where is it? She told me it was in the North Carolina mountains. So I asked my parents, I said, can I go to painting camp? They said, yes. Watercolors half the day, oil painting the other half the day. 5 years after that, I come to Penland. It's Bill Brown's first summer. I've come to help him out for a couple of weeks. I'm in grad school. Edwina comes with me. She's in the car with me because my mother thought it was a really good idea and said, Edwina can help you drive home. And Frank Herring says to my mother, send her to art school. So we go back to Memphis, and I enroll in the Memphis Academy of Art, thinking I was going to be a painter. So I took jewelry the first semester. I took pottery the second semester. And so then somehow or other the next year, I took more pottery classes, and then this is what happened.
When Cynthia and I came to Penland, I landed here because I was in the car with her. I didn't have anything to do. And then I asked Bill Brown about weaving, and he said, go to the weaving room and let Helen Henderson help you. Helen taught me how to wind a warp, dress the loom. Now you get underneath and retie the treadles. And I didn't realize that I was off and running.
I had started setting up my studio outside of Memphis. Some friends said, we bought some property for investment purposes. There's an old house on it. If you want it, the rent will be cheap. And Edwina was still living elsewhere. And so I said, well, if there are 2 bedrooms, you stay here. Mother and Daddy knew she was interested in weaving, and they found an old loom for Edwina. So she had a loom in the house, and she kept wanting to weave more. And I said to her one day, I said, call Bill Brown up and see if you can go to Penland. She didn't say anything to me for 2 days because I said, you could just go up there and learn to weave. Silence for 2 days in the house. She called Bill Brown up. Bill Brown said, come up. So Edwina came up here to Penland. She was like a course student before they named them course students. She took care of the house she was living in, all the visitors that came in to stay in that house. She took care of the weaving room, ordered materials, helped with everything. That was Edwina's education in weaving. She was a resident artist at the barn, then was hired at UNCC in Charlotte as a teacher and taught there for 25 years.
I think what made Edwina so popular as a teacher was because she was teaching in an area that a lot of students didn't necessarily choose initially, and discovered important kinds of things about their art making through a materials and through a process or through skills that they really hadn't thought that they were inclined to have. So I think there was this discovery that was going on. Edwina is a perfect mix, in my mind, of a teacher because she is kind and understanding, or empathetic with a student, where they might be, how they might be struggling. I just think she's a natural.
Toshiko Takaezu, the very well-known potter who taught at Penland many times, and she said to me one time that Cynthia was the only one she knew that went to Alfred and made money because Cynthia was selling pots to put coins together so she could start a studio. She knew what she wanted to do.
I came to Penland 1963. That was in between my graduate student years. Bill Brown was the second director at Penland School. Lucy Morgan really kind of chose him. He was the assistant director to Fran Merritt at Haystack School in Maine. I had been to Haystack for several summers, first as a work study and then as the studio person in the clay studio. I had finished graduate school. I'd started setting up a studio, and then I started teaching classes at Penland and helping Bill Brown out. So I would drive up here and teach a class, then I'd go back to my studio. I started helping Bill with the clay studio and helping organize that. I helped hire the faculty. I oversaw the studio. I took care of materials being ordered, clay being ordered, geared in the studio assistants as to what they were supposed to do. This was all volunteer work. In 1969, I built this house on Penland land. I'd put a shed out back. I ran an extension cord out to the shed, and I made pots under the shed. And Bill Brown called me and said, I've started concentration program, which was 8 weeks in the fall and 8 weeks in the spring. And I want you to teach it. I finally thought, okay, I'm gonna move there anyway. In 1970, I moved up here. The first concentration, I taught pottery and Edwina taught weaving.
Pawpaw, my grandfather, Dr. Carrie Bringle, was very supportive of Cynthia when she started as a potter.
You have to remember that when I started doing this full time, people would go, what are you doing? You know, because I wasn't getting married and having the 2+ children. I was making pottery to sell. And the nice thing was our parents thought it was all right what we were doing. And our father had said to us, you can do whatever you want to do, just do it the best you can. I don't care if you dig ditches, but just do it to your ability. And people would say to our father, it's nice Cynthia has a hobby. He'd look at him and say, it's not her hobby, it's her business.
She built the very first gas kiln at Penland. People may not be aware of that, but when Bill Brown was the director of Penland in 1963 or 64, Cynthia was just there for the summer, and all Penland had was a very small little ceramic studio and a few electric kilns. And Bill wanted a gas kiln because he knew if Penland was going to be serious about ceramics, they had to have a kiln. And so he asked Cynthia if she would help, and Cynthia built the first gas kiln. The thing about Cynthia's work is it's very tactile. It's just wonderful to hold and to feel. And the mug that she gave me, I used to drink my tea out of for over 20 years. Every day I felt like I was having tea with Cynthia. And there was something just incredibly special about that.
Most everybody, at least in our culture, Western European culture, knows what a mug is. It's something that connects us. It's also probably the most intimate object that we make because it touches our lips. Cups do too, but with a mug, you hold it and you put it to your lips.
My own romantic notion of, when you're holding a mug and bringing it to your lips, that arches between those two parts of your body in a really sweet and meaningful way.
This way I'm picking the cup I want to drink out of.
One of the things that I really enjoy as a potter is being able to use work every day. My cupboard is full of so many different coffee mugs, but this one in particular here is made by Cynthia. And every time I drink from it, I think of Cynthia. When we can make something like a coffee mug, and we can make something that people can come in and they can touch it, they can take it home with them, it can be so much a part of their journey of everyday life, whether it's by themselves for morning coffee or they're sitting around the table with family or friends and enjoying that true moment of fellowship. This vessel is the vehicle for being able to make that happen.
Well, that one's mine, because Edwina picked her cup.
In our home down here, there's a cabinet devoted mostly to coffee mugs and tea bowls. And I think those two objects are very personal. You bring the pot to your mouth, and it's the kind of thing for most of us, is starting our day with our favorite coffee mug that kind of becomes an important ritual in our lives. And I think there's so much humanity potential. They're speaking to sort of to me, the spiritual side of material things, the things that are reflective of human beings. And I think the craft movement is basically that. It's when we take material and we communicate through that material. And it could be as subtle as a mug, where it's very much like comfort, like, oh, this greets my hand, greets my lip, and I love the feel of it. I love the visual of it.
Last time I had a kiln load come out, she came in and she said, I think I need a new cup. So she searched through the kiln load and left with one.
It was time.
Yeah.
To really understand, I mean, to take dirt and to turn it into something that's functional and also beautiful is something that crosses every civilization, every culture, every group of people.
She likes to find a way of connection, whether it's lines or embellishments that she puts on the surface of the handle that will be complementary to how she carves the surface of the piece, but yet feeling like you can pick up the piece and it's going to be comfortable to grab and then be able to pour with it. Finding that balance is always a challenge. For me, in my shapes, I want to have it more smooth. I want to have the flow and the positive and negative shapes working together in unison. And we still live through that today, through some of the things that Cynthia and other potters have shared, how you have to find the right voice with the material and finding the right finished point. When you work with clay, it's going to be a journey of sketches and ideas. And to find the finished point of a piece is wonderful, but I believe that when you work with clay, it's more important about the journey and what you discover along the way that makes it even more special.
Got through college.
That's not bad. It's 18 and 28.
So put them all in?
Yeah.
Woo. Here it comes. Man,
Wow.
that looks terrific.
Wow, look at the range of color.
Yeah, great color. Brushwork worked nice with this, with the carving, I think, in your floor.
Wow.
So,
And the ash buildup there too on the side. And
so I don't think it could be any better.
yeah. So got both of
Yeah.
our signatures here on the bottom.
Right. So
It's a beautiful collaborative piece. Really a wonderful opportunity to work together with Cynthia and make something special. So I threw the vase and then took the vase to Cynthia's studio up at Penland. And we just gave her time to add the handles and then really think about carving the surface. And
yeah, well, it was a week's worth of carving to get this done.
I think Cynthia is as much a painter as she is a potter. She's a North Carolina living treasure, and it shows. I mean, in officially she's a treasure.
I didn't know I wanted to be an artist. I just like doing art. Up on the wall in this area is a painting of a bear. I did that painting when I was 14. And somebody wanted to buy that painting from me. They said, I'll buy it for $25. Well, when I was 14, $25 was a lot of money. But I didn't want to sell it. I said, no, I'm just not going to sell it. These are all images of mine, of things I've done. You know, there's me a long time ago. My son, pots I've done. So I'm trying to figure this out and make it work. So you just keep moving it around. I went to art school to be a painter and fell into pottery. So, and the thing is that people come in my gallery, my paintings are on the walls. Edwina's fiber work, of course, on the walls, but people come in and they look at the paintings and they go, well, who did the art? I go, and they go, really? So, yeah. I think the foundation for all the arts is to not, first of all, don't limit yourself to one area. I mean, I tell all these people that are young in craft, I said the best thing you can do for yourself is go take drawing, painting, photography, any of the other crafts, because they all relate and they all come back in. You got to learn to really look.
I'm working on using the Ecot, which is blue and white, of course, dyed yarn. I did recently, and that's the weft I'm working with. And what about you?
Well, I made a few pieces to carve, so they're about ready. You have to get them to the right point.
They have their own creative identities and how they approach, whether it's clay or fabric, but yet how they interact with each other so much, how they influence each other and what they do. I can easily see how, just looking at the world of color and design that Edwina presents in her work through those fabrics and the creations she makes, how it plays such a big role in affecting her sister, Cynthia, and how she chooses color and design.
Edwina's work is quite unique in its very comfortable exploration of color. See, I would look at it and think, wow, that's very precise, and that color is in relationship with that color, and that proportion of that color is really strategic with that. I look at it from a designer, and those are the things that I am very drawn to in people's work.
I think of how Annie Albers really inspired others with her colors in her weaving. And Edwina can do that too. She takes and puts together within, a very small area, colors that the average person would never put together. And it works. She understands the way it optically blends.
What I work with a lot is color, and then using the texture with what I'm doing. Even though these look like maroons and reds and blues, by the time I finish, I could have orange or gray or black or white, all different kinds of threads in the weft threads, which are the threads that go across.
I remember one day going to Edwina and saying, Edwina, how do you choose your colors? And she says, well, a light, a dark, and a bright. Doesn't matter what they are, that's what you put together. And you just think about how much of one and how much of the other you want. And I began to apply that, and to this day I apply it.
I started putting color together, but I actually put them on the floor. And people go, what do you put it on the floor for? Well, it gives me a visual distance, and it's like seeing a painting that you've created that you put on the wall and you get a distance from, so you can figure out the depth and the proportions of what's happening.
She uses that yarn like a painter would a full palette of paint. If she's working with red, she won't use one red. She uses every red that she's got available in her yarn closet. She won't use one texture. She combines bulky wool with thinner wool. She has chenille, she has bouclés. I would love to be able to see into her mind when she makes those kinds of color decisions, because it seems so right when she puts things together.
I was aware at a very young age that Edwina had a gift for color. This is a blanket that I bought when I was in Memphis. So it's one of the first pieces of art that I think I ever bought. My aunts, they'd give me a decent amount of stuff, but you know, they're not shy to charge me for artwork. And so
she, I think, looks at the world differently than the average person. She has a sense of balance in her work. And I mean that in several ways. I mean, yes, the weave structure is important, but also the way she balances the colors within the cloth to create either movement, texture. She looks at how she can say something through cloth that nobody else is saying.
Is this going to be a scarf?
I have no idea. It might be a scarf a very eclectic scarf when I finish, and which it's meant to be. I mean, it has a plan. As I pick up different colors and put them together.
Edwina told me that when she first warped a loom, that Bill Brown came by and said, well, you've got the warp on there, what are you going to do now? But when she put the weft in, she was beginning to see how a visual vibration happens when colors line up beside each other. And she says the light bulb went off for her when he asked her that question. She began to realize that this is where I can make these colors sing.
Sit. Sit. Down. Down. Easy. Sit.
You know, one of the things that makes Cynthia's work so unique is the combination of terrific beauty in her shapes. I mean, look at this platter that not only is formed in clay, but also is carved. I mean, her extreme attention to detail of the carving on this. But then you look at it again, she's gone back and she's painted her Asian influence calligraphy, if you will, on it as well. So you've got a combination of dealing with the material in ways that I just don't see many potters throughout the country doing. Her ability to work on surface and at the same time shape. Some potters really depend on their glaze, or they depend on their shapes, or they depend on the firing. Cynthia combines all of it together in a way that I think is truly unique and spectacularly beautiful.
Cynthia was always original. I mean, her hand, her style, her brushwork, she incorporated something that, in my opinion, is truly Cynthia, but also part of the time. I recognize that breaking of sort of that traditional aesthetic, kind of displacing it with this new contemporary style, but also a love for the traditional side of the material and what it can do and how it communicates.
I see the brushwork and I see the apparent freedom that she uses to decorate her work, and yet I know that there's an enormous amount of skill and time that goes into that for her.
One of the things that I personally feel about craft is how critical the relationship to the maker is to the object, because most craft objects are made to use, And therefore, the maker who makes it becomes an integral part of how their own personality and spirit is reflected within that object.
Penland is one of the oldest such craft schools in the country. It was founded in 1929 when Lucy Morgan, or Miss Lucy as she is referred to, decided to do two things in the area. One was to revive the skill of weaving, which had all but disappeared throughout most of the country, but especially in this region, but also give the local women an opportunity to have an income inside the home.
If I think about Cynthia's nickname and maybe Edwina's nickname too, like the Mayor of Penland, the boys called her the Mayor of Penland. It really comes out of, if you have a mayor of a small town or a place, that person knows everybody and knows what's going on with everybody and cares deeply about what's going on with everybody.
Edwina wouldn't be Cynthia Edwina without Penland, but Penland wouldn't be Penland without Cynthia and Edwina too.
The reason you call her the mayor of Penland is because she embodies the spirit of Penland from basically the late 60s, 70s till now. Both of them do. And they're the ones who are the keeper of the history of what's gone on and the people have come and gone and how Penland has changed.
So, of course, the place has grown in the last 93 years. We started with weaving out on the craft house porch, but today we offer over 130 workshops annually. We operate 16 studios, all of them very nicely equipped and very modern, so quite the difference from when we started 93 years ago.
Cynthia and Edwina came into the contemporary craft movement in the 1960s in an impressionable and burgeoning moment in the history of contemporary craft. It was also a time when women's rights and civil rights were on the rise. It's all coming together at that same moment.
Cynthia and Edwina have persevered through having to put up with sexism their entire lives, as women have, because they just refuse to accept it. And it's their strength of keep going, of perseverance more than anything. I don't think I would consider them, at least how I've known them, as what we would have called back in the 60s or 70s women libbers, or really people active in any sort of protest sort of way. They just did it.
She's a woman in a man's world, both teaching, selling, making pots, firing pots, everything. And she's been successful because most of the men in the world look up to her.
Maybe now there are certainly gentlemen who will listen to women. In the early days, they didn't listen to people like me. They think, oh, she's young, she doesn't know what she's thinking about. Trying to get men to listen to what I'm saying to them and do it the way I ask instead of what they think. Because they often are not thinking in the right direction to fix something that I have that needs to be fixed. And I'll say blah, 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 and they just go off on their own and do it backwards.
It was very difficult in those days to take a workshop from a successful woman studio potter. Most of the workshops that were out that were available for me to take were from men. And so I very deliberately went through the Haystack catalog and found Cynthia and decided that that was the class that I wanted to take because she was a woman. I wanted her as a role model.
Cynthia was never afraid to stand up and say, this is how it is. This is what I do. This is who I am. I think that certainly influenced women artists, not just potters. She never apologized for what she was doing. She never thought that this is a man's potter's world. It was, this is what I do for a living, and I'm confident in what I do, and I'm good at it. And she was, and she could take that confidence, be forward with it, and not be afraid to stand on her own 2 feet and, you know, express herself.
During Carter's time, Joan Mondale, her husband was the vice president, and because of Joan Mondale, a whole group of artists were asked to make dinnerware for a Senate wives' luncheon.
Rosalind Carter and Joan Mondale selected works to be part of the White House dinner plate collection, and Cynthia's work is a part of that.
People said to me, well, what did you do with it? And I said, well, I was doing some dinnerware orders, so I used some of it for that. And everybody went, you didn't just save it. I said, it's dinnerware. I do have a few pieces from it, but I just let it be bought with dinnerware I was making for somebody.
Certainly one of the memorable things was several years ago when we got the Outstanding Artist Educator Award from Penland.
Cynthia and Edwina received together the Penland Artist Educator of the Year Award. That's a really important honor that Penland bestows on its educators. So if you think about how important Penland has been and how important education has been to the two of them, you'll understand that if you're standing in front of 450 of your honored friends and colleagues, to know that they have chosen you to receive this award is really meaningful.
We have a lot of artists who, you know, look up to them because of this, because of not only the fact that they have such amazing high standards for their own work, but because they're also so generous with their knowledge, their ideas, their concepts.
It's nice to be in a tent of people who really, for the most part, we all know the contribution that both Cynthia and Edwina have given. How do you put a crown on top of it? I mean, how do you amplify what they've done? I mean, that's an honor, but the reality is that it's much larger than even that, because it's hard to express or compact all that into just honoring them, because they lived it, they made it happen. They deserve more.
After Cynthia and Edwina received their Outstanding Artist Educator Awards, there was so much love from the community for these two artists and educators that several scholarships were created and endowed here at Penland in their names. So now that we have these endowments, there will always be scholarship recipients here receiving the Cynthia and Edwina Bringle Scholarship in perpetuity.
They continue to take classes at Penland all the time. They're continuing to push the art form. And I think, if anything, that's probably how they will be remembered, is their incredible generosity of spirit, their willingness to quickly share information, to invite conversation with not only the objects that they create, but also the knowledge that's behind it.
No, Edwina's not going to stop. I've told her before she wears me out.
Their example of being in the world, being committed to their work, being courageous about their work. Those are examples that you just want to think, let's hold on to those. Her legacy will be for us, we'll be going about one thing or other and find ourselves thinking, what would Cynthia do?
They will always be remembered for their impact here at Penland.
I hope that one day when I'm in my 80s that I can be like Cynthia.
You don't just stop doing things that you love to do. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, they love what they do, and so they're going to do it as long as they possibly can. And I consider all of us who are creators or makers, who really love what we do, as maybe the most blessed of people.
And I remember every time I see her, how much she's meant to me, how much she influenced who I am now, influences still.
They both have so much to give.
They have a history as well as a presence.
If you're asking what she means to me, it's hard for me to describe what she means. Because I can't imagine, not having her around.
At least for 30 years and maybe longer, Cynthia has given people that came by her studio a bookmark with this poem or really manifesto written on it that she wrote herself years ago. What is a pot? A pot is not just any gray little bowl of clay. A pot is a pot for daffodils, or a porridge pot, or a pot for pills, cruets and goblets, jars and jugs, platters and plates, trays and mugs, shallow pots or dark and deep pots, to give and pots to keep, touch them, hold them, pick them up, a batter bowl or a sake cup. Feel the curve of earth and sky, kitchen warmth or springtime shy. A pot is a mood of many hues, but most of all, a pot is to use. And I think that just summarizes Cynthia's wanting these objects to be utilized.
I was asked by Edwina to introduce her for her Outstanding Educators Award, so this is what I wrote and read. With rayon, silk, bamboo, and wool, her gifts are fiber spun from mind and spirit, with love of nature and wisdom of design. Earth's colors entwined, vivid and subdued, dark and light, emerge from patterned, opened-wing creatures, spring and autumn foliage, stormy and bright skies. Loom woven rich or free-form stitched, details and textures are broad and boundless. She opens our eyes with her inspiration. With ceaseless drive, she explores the arts as a student of photography, flame work, of copper and enameling. She forms insights and connections with twofold intentions. What she gains, she applies as designer and maker. What she masters, she models as teacher and mentor. As teacher, she blankets us with learning, questions our self-imposed limits, keeps us at task, guides and pushes us forward in our visual understanding, imbues a sense of quality and craft, opens and enriches our lives. Her reverence for the world fills our souls. Her regard for humanity never leaves one of us behind. As mentor, she listens and counsels with attention and concern. She knits a web of trust and confidence, directs and introduces us to cohorts and collaborators. Her dedication to the arts and compassion for community are interwoven. She's an ally who leads us outside of ourselves and into the world beyond. And she is with us, always for us, steady and strong. And all of us here know her because she is one of Penland's own, my teacher, mentor, colleague, and friend, Edwina Bringle.
What would your older self say to your younger self?
You know, I don't know that I'd change anything. You know, I am who I am. I'm not retiring. I'm still working. You know, I've got a lot of yarn, but I'm not getting rid of it.
I'm just happy to have done it and to keep doing it. I do this because I like it, or I wouldn't still be doing it. Many of my students have retired and quit making pots, quit teaching. Well, people say, well, when are you going to retire? I said, I am retired. People retire to do something they want to do. I've always done that. So I don't need to retire.
Your sister manages it to a bunch. About a little wardrobe rack slash. No, I brought some. Yeah, that was great. Is it? Good to see you. So I'm thinking that a collar choice.
You're gonna do that with us?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's weird.
You do?
Yes. But that's weird.
But weird, my hope is that weird is good.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's the right choice. You're a little shorter, right?
Yeah. No, Cynthia's short.
Oh.